There we go. Okay, so this meeting is being recorded and transcribed. It will be posted out on our IRP webpage after the meeting. There was a pretty good tutorial at the beginning of the targeted tag 5 meeting about how to go out to our IRP webpage. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, irp@cngc.com. That's the best way to reach us. Throughout this meeting, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, to interrupt us. If you do raise your hand and jump on the call, please make sure to introduce yourself. That way we know who you are and the company that you're representing. And then I ask the presenters to do the same. When you jump in to present, please introduce yourself. Yeah. All right, so yeah, we'll do a safety moment, and then we'll jump into the environmental policy presentation. We have a lot of good information today, talking about the Climate Commitment Act. We'll give an update on some of the local and state policy and federal policies that we're seeing, as well as giving an update on the TENS program. And then obviously throughout the presentation, please feel free to give us feedback. And then at the end, we'll stop and open it up for feedback as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Jenny to open us up with a safety moment.
Hi, my name is Jenny DeBoer.
Hey, Jenny, we can barely hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Is anyone else having issues, or is it just me?
She's
No,
very
it's
quiet
very
for me as
faint.
well.
It's not just you.
Okay. Yeah, it seems very faint.
Let me unplug. Does that help at all?
It's still very faint. I think we can hear you well enough to get through the safety moment if you want to just run through it.
I'll talk loud and power through. All right, quick safety moment on power lines. Make sure you keep workers and equipment at least 10 feet away from power lines at all times. Never touch anything that's coming in contact with a power line, and always assume power lines are dangerous. Down power lines are dangerous. The wind has been very crazy this spring, and with it may come down power lines. So if you see that, stay in your car if you're in your car, and call the authorities, and make sure not to step in any water or any area near a down power line. That'll be it for the safety moment.
All right, thanks, Jenny. All right, and now I'll kick it over to Gabe.
Here we go. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gabe Forster. I'm an environmental compliance manager in sustainability for Montana Dakota Utilities. That also looks over Cascade Natural Gas. So today we're going to go through our environmental policy, a little bit about Climate Commitment Act in Washington, and a couple other motions we're trying to move forward with to benefit everybody, hopefully. Cascade's committed to reducing emissions is our first slide. So Cascade is an energy provider serving Washington and Oregon. As such, we have an important role in securing a lower carbon future. We hope that the material presenting today represents topics that environmental and other departments monitor from state, regional, and local environmental regulatory and legislative aspects that could have an impact on Cascade's IRP planning process. So we have set methane emission reduction targets along with MDU Resources Group of 30% by 2035 compared to 2022 levels. This is a pretty recent target as it's based off of 2022 levels. And with that, I'm going to read through our environmental policy real quick, just so everybody is up to date on it. The company will operate efficiently to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Our environmental goals are to minimize waste and maximize resources, to be a good steward of the environment while providing high quality and reasonably priced products and services, and to comply with our or surpass all applicable environmental laws, regulations, and permit requirements. I'm gonna open up this chat because I just saw somebody commented real quick.
I think-
Oh, no,
I
nobody
think we have a
commented. Okay.
question. I think we have a
Yeah,
question.
hand was raised. That's right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Quinn Weber with Washington UTC. I'm just curious when when that policy was started by MDU.
That would have been 2023. Oh, the policy. Sorry. I was thinking our methane emissions target. That was here before I got here. I'll have to pass it off to my director, Abby, real quick. She has her hand raised. She has more of a knowledge on that than I do.
Yeah, I don't either know exactly the date that we established that policy, but we can find that out for you. And I might be able to actually find that out by the end of the presentation here. If not, we can get back to you specifically, but it has been in place and modified a little bit over time, but it's many, many years. So we'll find that out for you, Quinn.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, Byron, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So, Byron Harmon, Washington, UTC. I have a question about the methane emissions reduction target. Do you guys plan to pursue this regardless of any state regulation, or does this goal hinge on the existence of state regulation?
No, we will continue regardless of the regulation to move toward this target.
Okay. That raises
Hmm.
kind of interesting questions around like IRP planning and like your like work with like Plexos. Will this target be kind of like hardwired into Plexos, even if it isn't necessarily like the most cost-effective like pathway?
With Plexos, I'm going to have to defer to Brian on that. He's more in the know of that process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Byron, if the CCA is redacted, we'll probably have to have a little bit of a discussion there, because it's going to change the avoided cost, obviously the cost of carbon. Obviously allowances will no longer exist if the CCA doesn't exist. So that'll change a lot of things, especially in terms of the cost effectiveness of reducing emissions. So we'll definitely need to discuss that further. We'd likely need commission support if we're not getting cost effective gas for our customers. And so, yeah, we'll definitely have to have further conversations about that.
Okay, I appreciate that. I look forward to those conversations. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. With that, I think we're ready to move on to our next slide. So here's our projected baseline emissions. With this, it kind of gives you an idea of what we were going with. You can see a big difference there with non-core regulated as covered entities separately under the CCA, and there's a big dip there. That's actually is because of the implementation of the CCA. With the CCA in place, a lot of large volume customers became responsible for their own emissions. That's why you see a big dip there. So kind of just shows you what our projections are going to be. They are lower for emissions, but and as things continue on, people move into the state and whatnot, you kind of see exactly what we're responsible for. Yes, Kara. Couple of questions. Kara? Are you there? Okay.
Looks like Kara removed her hand. So Quinn.
Okay, we'll Quinn. Yeah.
Hi, Quinn Weber again, UTC. So I see that on the graph, the baseline emissions for residential customers keep increasing. Could you go into what underlies that assumption?
So
Yeah, Brian.
this is yeah.
Yes.
So this is what I was mentioning at the beginning. This is last year's IRP graph. We have not locked in a customer forecast yet. We had the customer forecast, load forecast targeted tag not too long ago. And we got a lot of good information that we took back, and we're still working on updating the customer forecast. So I wouldn't read into the baseline numbers here too much. But I think the purpose of this graph was to show kind of a general number of our customer allocation between residential, commercial, industrial, and non-core emissions.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
All right. We'll go on to the next slide. Brian, are you? Oh, thank you. Okay. So, reducing customer emissions is also a big goal for Cascade. This comes with a couple different targets, or goals, I should say. We're trying to do this with energy efficiency and conservation is one. We like to try to work with our customers to maximize cost-effective therm savings for residential, commercial, industrial customers. This comes with adaptive management for changing codes, standards, forecasts, and low-income weatherization offerings. This comes with targeted outreach, looking for energy efficiency programs and seeing what our customers can really benefit from. So with this and looking into these projects, we're looking into things like developing low carbon fuel productions, developing thermal energy networks, carbon capture, looking for different types of fuel sources possibly for some customers. So yeah, just trying to make the best cost decarbonization efforts for our customers. And we got a little graph or a little chart there on the side showing annual energy efficiency and conservation savings over the past recent years for Washington and Oregon. Emissions from natural gas distribution operations. So Cascade's methane emissions from pipeline and infrastructure. This changes year to year, but we kind of have a basis of what we're operating on, a general understanding of what we're going to be emitting and responsible for. So distribution system, methane emissions, compressor station emissions report to the Department of Ecology equals about 27,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent every year. The EPA announced amendments recently for Subpart W report in 2023. We expect these to be taking place effectively in 2025 to be reported in the beginning of 2026. We don't know the exact final ruling language for this yet, but the EPA still defines the release events as released of greater than 250 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So, and with other operation emissions added for our inventory, we expect total annual emissions between 35 and 48,000 metric tons of CO2e per year. And Cascade's 2023 methane emissions is a pretty good rate, actually. It's a rate of 0.047%. This is a percentage of volume of methane emitted per total methane throughput volume. I think it's a pretty good pretty good number there. I saw somebody raise their hand. Oh, Abby, you raised your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. I I'm trying to think of Byron's question from before, and I just wanted to point out that 30% reduction of operational emissions across our entire company, 30% reduction of 22 emissions by 2035. These are the emissions that we're talking about for that goal. So it's, 30% reduction, and what we're talking about, what's in this 35,000 to 48,000 range, depending on the different types of emission factors and protocols you use to calculate these emissions using those emission factors. So just wanted to point that out in case there was a question on that, especially as it was being talked about in regards to modeling for compliance. As these emissions are regulated under the CCA, but if the CCA wasn't in place, we would still be looking at reducing these emissions prudently and have that goal in place. So unless there's another, I see Byron has his hand up there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the clarification. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page here. So when you're saying that you have a 30% reduction target, you're referring to these kind of distribution system emissions and transmission system emissions, not like customer emissions. Correct.
That those would be looked at differently within evaluations we're doing for decarbonization of customer emissions. The 30% was for our operational emissions. Yeah.
Okay. That's a very big difference. I appreciate that clarification. Yeah. Otherwise, I would have thought it would. I thought you were talking about like your customer emissions. So I appreciate that clarification.
Right. Yeah, no problem. And then Gabe, can I just take a moment here too? I saw in the chat that Kara was having trouble with her mic, and
I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Her question was just maybe more of a detailed question about that previous graph of where we showed the different residential, commercial, and industrial, and transport customers, those non-core customer differences. There were those non-core regulated customers that were in that transport category, I think she was wondering about. And yeah, those are large industrial sources. I don't know if we talk about any of those particular customers in our slides, but those could be in kind of an EITE category, but would still have to have their emissions regulated through us because they don't emit more than like those 25,000 ton category themselves. So Kara, I hope that helped explain that.
Yes, thanks, Abby. And I was able to jump out and come back in. Can you actually go back to that slide? That's super interesting, Abby. So this is a difference in the way the CPP operated versus the CCA. Okay, so this chunk they're all transport customers, all of them. And some of them are going to be kind of like the small Safeway, maybe that's making a decision about its gas use every year. And so it's different contracts maybe every year. Some of them are going to be those big industrial sources. Some of them are going to be power, electricity.
Correct. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yep. They, I think there might be in a few cases, they might not be transport customers. They might be other exempt customers here, like military bases and things like that too. There's, but
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, passing it back to you, Gabe.
Okay. Had one little last bit to explain there on this slide. So with the methane emissions rate of 0.047%, I was saying that's a pretty good number comparatively to other like coalitions and conglomerate energy company associations. Their goals are 0.22%, and the higher end of those is 0.092%, almost double what we were looking at here. So we're doing I'm just saying we're doing pretty good. This is a really good number. Pretty proud of it. Okay, reducing operations emissions. Yeah, we made some good motions here recently. We're looking to do some more on moving forward with our commitments to methane emission reductions. We created more of a robust inventory of greenhouse gas emissions in all our operational areas for 2022. We'll continue to do that. We also joined One Future Coalition. One Future Coalition is a group of energy companies nationwide who are all focused on achieving greenhouse gas emission reduction goals specific to the coalition itself. Like this is kind of going above and beyond what just regulatory is requiring people to do. Yeah, and so we'll be operating with those entities nationwide and looking to reduce methane intensities. With doing that, we'll be kind of on the forefront of strategizing forward with technology, new information coming out. A lot of these companies are, I mean, it's the old concept, four eyes are better than two, so on and so forth. This is going to be a lot of heads coming together to really push forward with meeting these goals. We also mitigate methane leaks, and we have adopted a program to quickly address even small leaks that are not considered a public safety concern. We're also exploring more ways to reduce emissions in normal operations, including the use of methane capture technology for pipeline blowdowns. Seen recent technologies on that, pretty excited about moving forward with those. And we're piloting a new project that we have proposed deployment on. It's a remote leak detection technology. We expect this to be a more efficient method which allows for identifying leaks and timely prioritization for repairs to minimize leaks in the future. Yeah, we're planning on using Precaro technology later in 2024 once we get the technology in from our order. The other companies that have used this technology have pretty promising results, so pretty excited about seeing that move forward here soon. Reducing operation emissions, our system integrity projects. So since 2019, Cascade has replaced over 42 miles of early vintage steel pipe and new steel pipe and plastic, polyethylene to be exact, pipe in Washington. This will reduce our overall any kind of possible leakage. It's just better components for infrastructure. And Cascade is in a better position than most U.S. utilities. It has no unprotected steel pipeline and no cast iron pipe, which is pretty prevalent back east. So we're sitting pretty good there. Byron?
Hello. In the previous draft of the slides that were sent out, this slide used to say 318 miles. Is there a reason why it was dramatically decreased down to 42?
Yeah, 318 was including also additional pipe that was installed in not just replacements. So peeled
Gotcha,
that back,
thank you.
just including replacements, not new, still high quality pipe, but this is replacing older pipe.
Oh, hey, it's Kathleen. I'll also add that I mean Cascade Gas has been doing pipe replacement like way before 2019 too.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we started around 2012.
Thank you, Kathleen. Yes. Okay. So as mentioned previously in a lot of other meetings too, we got Climate Commitment Act in Washington. This program is established to address a declining cap on greenhouse gas emissions for covered entities. This program's been in track for over a year now. This is all to reduce anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. You can see here, we want to achieve 1990 levels by 2020, which that's passed. So now we're going to go down 45% below 1990 levels by 2030, so on and so forth, down to 70 by 2040 and 95% by 2050. Covered entities include fuel suppliers, natural gas distribution like Cascade Gas itself, electric utilities, and large facilities. As we mentioned earlier, large facilities are responsible for themselves in this regard. Landfills and certain emission intensive and trade exposed, or EITE, entities are added in during the second and third compliance periods, which will be coming in a few years from now. Okay, and Climate Commitment Act extended here. We got our regulated emissions. Our customer emissions are about 1.9 billion metric tons of CO2 equivalent in 2023. This includes all core customers. As mentioned before, our non-core customers that are not covered entities under the CCA, which are equal or less than 25,000 metric tons. And yes, this is Washington, Kara. And excludes customers that may opt into the program individually or that may petition to be emissions intensive and trade exposed EITEs. So our operation emissions are greater than 25,000 metric tons, as mentioned earlier. It's about 26,000, about 27,000. This is our numbers from last year's 26,922 metric tons. This includes our methane leakage and our fuel combustion for like compressor stations. So, whole point of the Climate Commitment Act is reduce our emissions. So we got this is how it's supposed to be projected here, that it's supposed to take place, really. I mean, we got 93% of our baseline emissions in 2023. Our baseline is based off of our average emissions between 2015 and 2019. It's a 7% incremental reduction from baseline each year from 2024 to 2023, which is one of the most intense reductions in the entire nation. After that, it becomes a 1.8 incremental reduction from baseline each year from 2031 to 2042, and then it picks back up to 2.6% reduction each year from baseline from 2043 until 2049. That puts us at that goal of 2049, 2050 of 95% reductions. So there are no cost allowances. That's what these are. This whole baseline is kind of, this chart here is showing. No cost allowances are distributed to natural gas suppliers each year in the end of the year in October. That's supposed to kind of gradually help entities break down and as we adjust into this new goal of 95% by 2050. Because 95% right now, it's a bit of a lift. So we gotta ease our way down by getting these no cost allowances. The allocation of no cost allowances, like I said, to come in October of the prior year. Now you can utilize these, but we have to consign these back into the auctions in the upcoming year, a certain percentage of them. Okay, rule requirement commenced last year, beginning of last year, 2023. We have 4 compliance periods. One of them, like I mentioned earlier, where those EITEs and landfills will become part of this as well. That's the second compliance period, 2027 to 2030. You can see there. We are kind of right in the middle of the first one. So 2024, this will end in 2026. We'll have to show full compliance the following year, 2027. by November 1st for that first compliance period. We do have interim compliance periods where we have to demonstrate 30% of our prior year's emissions by November 1st. Demonstrating compliance means that we have to have some environmental attributes of 30% of our previous year's emissions in our bank for compliance. That is how we demonstrate that. Okay, and with that, we can get into what actually we can use for compliance options. Allowances, kind of mentioned earlier, we got no cost allowances, but we do get allowance options that we can procure otherwise through the market. These allowances are equal to 1 ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. We got energy efficiency and conservation demand side management. This includes, renewable natural gas, which you can get from landfills through the MRET system. It's a 1-for-1 replacement of fossil gas emissions through RTCs. I think we got Sarah here. I'll read your comment real quick after I finish this. Then we got offsets. This is a program that takes up a big chunk of the Climate Commitment Act, actually. These offsets are meant to be projects that will offset emissions. This includes agricultural projects that will minimize methane emissions into the atmosphere, reforestation projects, urban forestation projects where you plant trees pretty much, or at least better create a carbon sink for the environment. 8% we can only use this for about 8% of our compliance. About 5% through the state, 3% through tribal. Other options include hydrogen, carbon capture, synthetic methane. These all can help meet those requirements, those compliance requirements through allowances. Abby.
Thanks, Gabe. I was just gonna assist and help answer one of the questions in the chat from Kara Saylor.
Yep.
Yeah, so Kara asked the question about, our compliance period in November of this year with the 30% obligation of 2023's emissions needing to be demonstrated, and how would we expect that will look for last year's emissions? Kind of, are we on track? And I'll just put that we're in the process of having just submitted our compliance, our emissions reports for this year, end of March. And we still have to go through a verification period, which has to be completed, I believe, by August 1st of this year. So truly, we won't exactly know everything until that point. And we are projecting that we would be able to comply by November with our compliance plan. And that's about all we can say at this point. And appreciate the question, Kara.
Thank you, Abby. Quinn?
I know we got into this a little bit earlier, but I'm curious about how Cascade is starting to model the incorporation of these resources.
With modeling, I'll pass that off to Ryan. He's got the guru on that.
Yeah, so I'm sure many of you are familiar with what we did last IRP. We'll be doing something similar. I think what we're going to do, because we're waiting to finalize the low carbon numbers or how we're going to get them. And so we plan on discussing this a little more at the final targeted tag and how we're going to incorporate it into our modeling. And so, yeah, we'll be including these. They'll be in our Plexus model. But there will be more to come in that last targeted tag meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Well, with that, I think that's the last of my slides. I think after this, we're going on to the next topic of TENS, where we're passing it off to Alan.
All right.
Thank-
Well, I
thank
think,
you,
as all of
everybody.
you know, I'm Alan Spector, and I think most of you are familiar with the Thermal Energy Network bill that passed into law this session. It takes effect June 6th, and that gives us as a company 12 months to identify a qualified project or projects in writing to the commission, and then 30 months from there to deploy. I understand there was a question of whether or not we had identified any projects at this point. And I would say right now, we're still in a very early phase. The legislation just passed into law. That clock starts on June 6th, and we're having internal discussions at this point on what the available pathways will be available to us in pursuit of networked thermal energy. So I think over time, we'll start to identify potential projects and communicate that. At this point, we just wanted to make sure the group knew that we're aware of TENS and the opportunities that present themselves through that law. And it looks like it could be a promising pathway for us to pursue pilot activities in future, and more details to come as we begin to more thoroughly investigate the options available to us. Next slide. So network thermal energy, what is it? It can come in multiple forms, whether it is geothermal, so naturally occurring geologic heat sources that are tapped into, ground source heat pump technology, where you've got the pipe underneath the surface. There's a liquid conduit that goes through that. It could be waste heat capture, perhaps capturing waste heat from data centers or other sources. So I think there's multiple avenues that could be pursued regarding networked thermal energy. We're going to explore a range of opportunities for the integration of the technology and see how it fits into our ongoing decarbonization compliance planning efforts. We're going to continue to participate in the Utility Network Geothermal Collaborative. That's a semi-formal collaborative of LDCs across the country that are all very interested or in various phases of exploring and pursuing networked thermal energy projects. And so I know there was some interest in what we're learning from those conversations with our peer LDCs across the country. A lot of it at this point is just learning what are the available technologies to us, really what are the different policy pathways. So what have regulators supported in other jurisdictions? What do some of those tariffs look like? How do the utilities interface with the other partners and entities at the table? And how do they interface with their communities on this? At what scale are these technologies being delivered? And then, what do various laws look like? So that's some of what we're looking at least on the external affairs side of the shop. And then we're feeding that information over to some of our internal planning folks as we begin to plug in, what are the different pathways that we can pursue as communities explore decarbonization, environmental priorities. How do all of these things fit together? We take the information from the Geothermal Collaborative and other sources on the external affairs side, and we're feeding those into our technical experts so that they have the full spread of information, best practices that we're seeing elsewhere. And then they're the ones ultimately that will take that over time and build that into modeling and plans as appropriate. But targeted pilots, eventually, if and when we pursue those, will help us determine the overall scalability of different TENS technologies and their applications to support further modeling over time. And I see something coming up in the chat. Thermal energy means pipe non-combustible fluids. Yep, absolutely. Thank you for putting the definition from the law into the chat. That's very helpful. Next slide. Great. So I'll turn it over to Sean Hansen.
Hi, folks. I'm Sean Henson. I'm part of our external affairs team focusing on Washington State. On this slide and the next, I'm just going to give a quick update on the city of Bellingham and then Whatcom County. In 2022, the city of Bellingham enacted an ordinance that requires electric space heating and water heating equipment in new commercial and large buildings, being 4+ story multifamily buildings. It also requires incremental improvements in energy efficiency, building envelope, lighting, insulation, and solar installation or readiness in new buildings. The electric-only mandate for space and water heating does not apply to single-family construction, detached houses, duplexes, townhomes, or row houses. And it took effect August 7th, 2022. The city of Bellingham continues to work on the design of the Climate Action Fund. Their preliminary drafts indicate that this would be treated as a property tax and would direct funds towards electrification, among other efforts. Following the city council and the mayor expressing reservations about the design and timing of the plan, it was announced that it'll be delayed. Next slide, please. And then in Whatcom County, in 2021, they voted to ban the construction of new refineries, coal-fired power plants, and fossil fuel-related infrastructure, primarily focusing on the Cherry Point industrial zone, but elsewhere in the county as well. This does not constitute a gas ban, but it may have impacts on our distribution system in Whatcom County. That's all I've got. Next slide. Oh, I see Quinn has his hands up.
Yeah, I'm curious if you've identified any specific impacts it'll have on your distribution system in Whatcom County.
I'd have to defer to the technical experts. I don't believe that we have anything. Does anybody want to jump in on that question?
Yeah, this is Brian, and I can jump in, and then I'll also open it up to Kathleen if she has anything to add. But we have not seen any impacts on our distribution system side in Whatcom County so far. We still have commercial and residential growth happening in that county.
Yeah, it's Kathleen. I agree with Brian. We actually checked in with the district this morning. Yeah, that was the report.
Yep. It's definitely something we're keeping an eye on, though, just because it's in one of the counties that we serve. Okay.
All right, I will give a quick update on the city of Bend. So since we last provided an update, and a lot of it is covered here in the slide with the Climate Action Steering Committee and then the Environmental and Climate Committee, which followed, there is now an official time frame for discussions pertaining to the future of natural gas, whether that is further gas decarbonization or electrification. They will be developing their gas plan. It started this month, May through October. There's a natural gas plan that's in development. So at the end of that time frame in October, the ECC is going to be taking several options to the city council for vote on short-term actions. So as I understand it, that's going to formulate the menu of options that the city can then pursue through the ECC to develop further into a formalized plan. So once the city council votes on the short-term actions and the menu of opportunities that they would like to see explored further, November through August, going into August 2025, that's the phase 2 launch of their natural gas plan. So that's when the city council will vote on the ECC's recommendations on natural gas. So we would anticipate that sometime in August of next year. And we are continuing in the state of Oregon to explore and pursue opportunities to support the city of Bend in their decarbonization goals, and just to continue to pursue decarbonization pathways as appropriate. Next slide. And I think that turns over to, I believe, Gabe.
Hello again. Yeah, our national focus. So we got a lot of fun rules that we're going to be looking into, and motions forward that we're kind of excited about. So U.S. Department of Energy published its final rule, 89 Fed Reg 24340 in April 2024. This revising coverage determination rulemakings, the process for developing energy conservation standards, test procedures, and ASHRAE equipments. Cascade will continue to monitor the impacts to our program in the future. Not too much there, but still, we're going to continue to see how that develops over time. The Department of Energy recently published its Federal Register notice for a direct final rule pertaining to energy conservation standards for consumer clothes dryers, along with its previously updated residential water heater efficiency standards, which would apply to new water heater models starting in 2029. Our energy efficiency team will continue to assess impacts to baseline equipment used to determine the company's energy efficiency portfolio. That's not the last that we'll probably hear of appliances, but it's something we're always looking for to see how any of this impacts us. The EPA proposed adjusting standards for Energy Star, natural gas furnaces, like I said, more appliances, to an AFUE of 97% or more, and is considering Energy Star qualifications for hybrid HP technologies. Our energy efficiency also will continue to monitor these developments and any potential energy efficiency programs, impacts, and opportunities. Also, the U.S. Department of Energy has also launched a notice of intent for funding opportunities for clean hydrogen programs associated with the BIL, or Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, part of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. Cascade is monitoring opportunities for partnership in this sector across the states we serve. By extension, this goes to our regional clean hydrogen hubs, H2 hubs. These are going to accelerate and support the production of storage and delivery and use of clean hydrogen. This is not right now, something that's in our forefronts. This is something that's going to happen in the upcoming years. Early 2030s is kind of when they're seeing the possibility of these H2 hubs getting actually utilized. So, like I said, currently in infancy of planning and funding, but we're going to continue to monitor that and see if any utilization is possible in the future. The EPA also recently announced amendments to Subpart W, as I mentioned earlier. The operational greenhouse gas emissions reporting is proposing emission factor updates and additional reporting of other large release events. This has been proposed, like I said, 2023, expected to take place and be effective for 2025, first to be reported in 2026. EPA finalized the greenhouse gas regulation on April 25th, 2024, requiring new high operation natural gas combustion turbines to install pollution control equivalent to carbon capture. So also existing coal units not installing controls would retire before 2032. We opt to co-fire with natural gas and retire before 2039, or install carbon capture to operate past 2039. So EPA is exploring greenhouse gas standards for existing natural gas combustion turbines. So more to be seen on that in the future. And the U.S. Senate bill under the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, also released in late July, which includes climate change investments to promote decarbonization for the economy. There's other programs all underneath the BIL, as mentioned earlier, with the hydrogen, and the IIJA with this with the IRA. Cascade is continuing to investigate all sorts of. There's a lot of programs underneath the BIL and the IIJA, all geared toward decarbonization, and Cascade is continuing to monitor all these different programs and see, is there a possibility to participate? Can we make a benefit out of these programs for our customer base?
Thanks, Gabe. But I see. Okay, I see Alan just answered the question. The car asks, have you talked to city officials about the possibility of TENS there? I assume this is you're talking about the city of Bend?
Yeah, sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
I put that in when you guys were talking about Bend, and then
No problem.
But yeah, Bend, just because I'm, the amount of growth that they're going to experience there, it seems like it could be a great opportunity. But I see the response here to Alan is just that, maybe wait. I guess I would encourage you not to wait. You don't maybe have to have all the answers before you start getting people excited about that as a possibility. I think it could be really exciting.
And I don't disagree with you. I think it's something that we're certainly thinking about. But since we are having those broader discussions, we're still just kind of formulating what the overall suite of opportunities might be. But I think, to your point, it probably is appropriate to have some discussions. But I just wanted to make it clear that there's nothing firm yet. But I think there are certainly folks that would be interested in those types of technologies. And as the opportunities emerge and we get a better sense of all of the tools available at the table, I think we certainly will have those conversations. And to your point, we don't want perfect to be the enemy of good either. I think the difference between Washington and Oregon is that in Washington state, a law passed that provides this fantastic opportunity both to seek recovery and to have some formalization of TENS pathways. TENS is now folded into our obligation to serve. That is a means that utilities can opt in to meet their obligation to serve through TENS at the discretion of our regulators, and also provides grant opportunities through the Department of Commerce. At this point, there isn't similar pathways available through law in Oregon, which means that maybe the cost prospects or putting together a plan through our regulators might look a little bit different. But that's not to say that we wouldn't be interested in something similar in the state of Oregon. So that's where there's a slight difference there in terms of potentially being ready to commit anything to the city of Bend. But certainly, I think conversations will take place.
Alan, I absolutely anticipated that would be your response. I think that's correct, that having the legislative driver is helpful. At the risk of maybe putting something out there, I would love to explore that as a possibility here in Oregon. If you wanted to put together some legislation, what that might look like. That would be really, really exciting to have. I have to confess, I've seen Cascade as a great leader potentially in this area, and it seems like you have the right constituent, the the base and bend to maybe make it work. So anyway, just leaving that on the table as maybe future discussion fodder.
Yeah, and I would say from the policy side of the shop, do feel free to reach out.
All right. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end where I'm going to open it up for any final feedback. Like I had mentioned, there's going to be a lot more discussion about these resources in the resource integration part, where we start looking at it in comparison to our baseline emissions and the costs and the different supplies and how that is all going to be modeled. But I'll open it up to see if there's any feedback for this presentation. I see, Heather, you have a hand up.
Yeah, this is actually not feedback. It's kind of cheating a little bit and asking for more information on how you all are interpreting the thermal energy network bill. Could you go back to Alan's first slide where it says, here's what thermal energy networks are?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe the next one. Okay. Yeah, so the definition in the bill says piped non-combustible fluids. So this is not, so thermal energy networks is not anything connected to natural gas or renewable fuel pipelines. Is that right?
That's correct. What I was describing was using piped non-combustible fluid as a conduit, and the source of the heat that is warming that conduit. And I'm wading into dangerous territory, not being a technical expert on network thermal energy, but my best understanding is that there's different ways to influence the temperature of the non-combustion conduit fluid traveling through that pipe. So we're not talking about any form of gas, whether geologic gas, renewable natural gas, hydrogen, none of that. This is strictly a liquid conduit going through a pipe that's maintaining a consistent temperature, that's transferring that heat through that liquid in the pipe to a networked group of buildings, facilities, campuses for the purpose of providing potentially space heat, water heat, other thermal energy needs.
Thank you. Yeah, that it is kind of cheating because I realize this is very new and we're all going to have different interpretations of what things mean, and it would make more sense for Cascade to come to the commission and say, what does this mean? But I appreciate your interpretation of that. Thanks.
Oh, and certainly this is our preliminary understanding. I think this is an opportunity for us also to express what our understanding is of the definitions based in the law. But certainly it is not an authoritative stance, and certainly we would be working with our regulators to further define and interpret. But what we're providing today, I believe, is a starting point of our best understanding. And if there are additional interpretations from our regulators, I think this is the perfect time to have those discussions as we begin to pursue opportunities available to us.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Abe, I see you have a question.
Yes, Abe Abdallah from Oregon Public Utility Commission. Are these thermal networks like the networks they use in Europe for waste heat from industrial plant waste heat that's actually heating water that goes around the residential areas for space heating? Is it something like that?
That is my understanding. That it's, and I think to Heather's point, the ultimate interpretations are going to be developed in conjunction with our regulators. But my best understanding is, yes, it would be waste heat capture that would be, the liquid conduit would absorb the heat from different types of waste heat end product. I think that, we did tour Denmark about 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, and there was some networked energy out there that, at least from my layman's understanding, would fall into that category. But again, technical definitions for the purpose of actually delivering these specific pilot activities, those are going to be developed in tandem, of course, with our regulators.
Thank you.
Same. Great question. Okay. So are there any other questions, any feedback? I'll leave it open for 10 to 15 seconds, just so people can think of a question and pop in and ask it. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'm not seeing any hands. So I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. And if you have any further questions after this meeting, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to answer those or connect you with the person who can answer those questions. So the remaining schedule, we are going to be coming back next Thursday for another targeted tag on distribution system planning. And then we will meet 2 weeks after that for the resource integration part. And then, as you can see here, this is our current timeline for the IRP. Because we've been getting a lot of really good feedback through the targeted tags, and there's a lot of modeling that we still would like to incorporate. We're definitely considering filing an extension on the IRP and pushing it back a little bit. I don't have any firm dates right now. Please feel free to reach out with me or with any questions or concerns. I'm going to try and put together a more firm file extension timeline and what that would look like for the next targeted tag. So keep an eye out for that. And please reach out if you have any questions. And so here's the contact, irp@cngc.com. Please feel free to reach out. There's also more contact information out on our IRP webpage. I'll try and get this presentation video recording posted today, with the presentation and the meeting minutes coming probably later this week or early next week. And then we will have targeted tag 7 on distribution system planning next Thursday. So please look out for those slides coming this Thursday. And I'll open it up one last time for final feedback, final comments, questions, suggestions. Yeah. All right, I'm not hearing anything, so thanks everybody for joining, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.